Okay, hi everybody. This is Scott Snibby, and I'm here at the Tara Buddhist Center to give a little Valentine's Day talk, which I'm looking forward to. I really appreciate the invitation from Paloma and the Tara Buddhist Center to talk because so many amazing teachers and students have shared their wisdom there, so I'm quite honored to be among that group. Whenever I'm invited to a Dharma center, I like to start out by reminding everyone that I'm not a Dharma teacher like some of the advanced teachers that have spoken here, but just a fellow student like you. So I like to think of myself as a teaching assistant more than a teacher, and that this is like a study session that we do together outside of the main class. You know, if you were in college, I think you remember that, where outside of the main class you'd go with one of the graduate students or senior students and you'd have a study session together. So please think of me that way. Today's talk is about love. And growing up, of course, I thought that love was about finding that one person that could satisfy my own huge list of needs and dreams and wishes. Someone who I could give the exclusive gift of my own love and affection and attention and time, you know, if they were deserving of it, and they met all my requirements. And I'm sure that sounds familiar to you guys too. Of course, there's many beautiful feelings too underlying that. And I've been lucky enough to find somebody like that. I'm married and I have a wonderful partner, and I've had other relationships with other wonderful people, and also plenty of problems in relationships too. So I think that's part of the benefit of having a little talk like this with an ordinary person who's been practicing the Dharma for a little while, because we can talk about some of the struggles through relationships. But even in a good relationship, our real life partner can fall short of the one that we fantasized about and the one that we projected onto a living, breathing person. And so, just as we fall short of our partner's projection onto us of fulfilling all their dreams, I mean, of course, nobody can live up to a fantasy. We can't live up to our partner's fantasy of us, and I can't live up to my partner's fantasy of me if they have one. You know, sometimes they're more realistic than I am. And I think sometimes, you know, there's that glow of an initial relationship, that honeymoon period that can last a couple of years. And so it's often only after a few years together, after you get married and have children, you know, if you choose to have children, figuring out that your partner has as many faults and fears and annoying habits as I do. So as Valentine's Day approaches next week, I thought it'd be nice to talk about a different type of love, the love that we learn about when we study Buddhism, that's not as caught up with attachment. The pure, unbiased form of love that's part of this Mahayana Buddhist path. You know, for anyone unfamiliar with Mahayana Buddhism, it's a Buddhism that emphasizes benefiting others. And so this other form of love is a form of love that can be practiced even if you're alone, actually. Of course, it's wonderful to practice when other people are around, and there's real people around to show your love and affection. But what's interesting is it's a form of love that you can also practice by yourself, and that brings on a very, very healthy, positive, warm, glowing state of mind. Very happy state. And it's a love that you don't have to limit to your partner, too, which might sound a little bit frightening, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. It's a type of love that you can limitlessly share with family and friends and strangers and even your enemies. So the Buddhist definition of love is a lot simpler than romantic love. I was really surprised and also delighted when I first learned it. There are different words. You know, they say there are these languages where they say there's more words for snow in certain languages, more words for getting drunk in certain languages. But in the languages of Buddhism, like Sanskrit and Pali and Tibetan, there are a lot of words for love. And so in Sanskrit, the word is Maitri, In Pali, the word is metta, which I think you've heard metta or metta practice. And its definition is very simple. It's wanting others to be happy. And so romantic love and the biased love that we have for friends and family typically comes with strings attached, that I expect a whole list of demands or strong requests in return for my love. And of course, so many people get divorced. Obviously, they do that sometimes for many very, very good reasons. But a lot of the time it's because, I'm not getting what I want from the relationship. So, but even outside of strong relationships problems, just in the day-to-day exchange of affection in a relationship, at least I can see that for myself, that when I show my partner affection, I expect affection in return. When I give my time and my energy to my friends, that I expect the same back from them. And then when I don't get the love and attention and affection back from those that I offer my love, I can get to a point where I'll stop giving it and I'll seek out partners and family and friends who reciprocate instead. And again, there's a healthy version of that where, of course, you want to spend your life and your time meaningfully and with people that, respect you and have common cause. But this is a little different. We're talking about when, more thinking selfishly, like, I need this love to come from my friends, from my partner. And in general, I think there's no reason to feel ashamed of this. An important part of the contemplative path is the openness and the acceptance of ourselves that lets us see these aspects of our mind without judging or blaming ourselves. So I think part of that practice is mindfulness, that, without judging yourself, without judging anyone else, just to become aware of whatever expectations we have for more conditional love. And then if we have more interest, to probe beyond the transactional love to this purer form of love, which we call loving kindness. So they say this loving kindness is a form of love that has no strings attached. And so what is the love that has strings attached? The term attachment is one that we use in Buddhism a lot for this type of feeling that wants a lot in return, and kind of exaggerates that we can get our satisfaction from things outside ourselves. This type of attachment isn't the healthy psychological attachment of a child to its mother, or the healthy attachment of loving partners to one another, but instead it's the attachment that believes happiness comes from outside ourselves, from other people, and from other objects. And I certainly know this feeling, and maybe you do, that attachment is thinking that we can't be happy unless other people provide the love and the affection and the attention that we expect from them. But from the Buddhist perspective, it's simply a mistaken belief that another person can be the cause of our inner happiness. As nice as it is to be with other people, of course, the idea that if you're not, that you become unhappy, is seen to be a delusion. That attachment exaggerates the positive qualities of another person, excuse me, and believes that if we just had that person in our life, that their presence and their attention and their affection would relieve our own sense of incompleteness and chase away our sadness and make us happy. And I say this from experience. I've felt that sense of incompleteness even this week, even as a person with a wonderful partner and a daughter. I do feel that regularly. So when you hear this type of lesson about this unselfish form of love. Like if you're listening to the Dalai Lama, of course it's amazing to hear it from a person who's achieved genuine non-attachment. And I'm sure most of you out there have listened to His Holiness and heard these type of discussions. But it's also interesting to talk as friends about our mutual attachment and how we can work with it together. People on the path together, the Sangha, as they say in Buddhism. So if we want to take on the Buddhist psychological model for the working of the mind, then we accept the hypothesis that attachment is a delusion, that it's one of the roots of our constant, unnecessary mental suffering, and we look with openness and curiosity at this purer form of love. So again, love in the simple Buddhist definition comes with no strings attached. Loving kindness is unselfishly wishing others to be happy, offering our affection and our smiles and our hugs and our help freely without demanding anything in return. And I think we all know people like this. They're very nice to be around, aren't they? I once heard someone ask Lama Zopa Rinpoche the difference between love and attachment. And what Rinpoche said was, love is wanting someone to be happy, and attachment is wanting it to be me that makes them happy. So loving kindness is wanting happiness for another person, no matter where that happiness comes from. This kind of selfless love is definitely part of the love between partners. And if you're someone who has a partner or who's had a partner, I'm sure you're familiar with it. And I feel it from my partner too, in those moments that I'm free from attachment that are, I think, unfortunately a little bit rare. It comes out when I do things for my partner that I don't really want for myself or our family. Things I might even think are a waste of time or effort or money, but I do them because it makes her happy. I saw this, you may have seen this in people that you know, maybe in yourself and your partner too. But I saw this selfless love in my mother-in-law when she was dying of cancer. And I recall my wife telling her about some of her last words to her husband, where, my mother-in-law expressed her sincere wish that her husband should find another loving partner to happily live out his life after she died. And so she showed that selflessness of wishing her partner to be happy, even if it wasn't going to be her that makes him happy. And so that was very moving to hear that. And when I think about my own imagined future on my own deathbed, like my mother-in-law, projecting forward like that to the end of my own life, that helps sometimes soften my own selfish feelings for a little bit. But normally my own love is deeply intertwined with attachment that tends to sour the softer feelings, the more altruistic feelings. It's, I feel embarrassed, sometimes, but feeling anger, sadness, resentment, and fear when my partner doesn't meet my fantasy, when they don't give me what I want. And then other times, I really feel that selfless love, and I'm sure you do too. But it seems a little random, these moments of selfless love. And so that's where it comes to seeking out systematic ways of cultivating selfless love through meditation. According to the teachings of Buddhism, there's something called Buddha nature. And that is a kind of innate goodness or potential for good within us. And it says that loving kindness is a natural quality that we all have latent inside us, that we can cultivate and even perfect. And there's even some scientific backing for this. I was talking to Dr. Rick Hansen, who was mentioning a number of different studies and even ways of looking at animals that suggests that that really is the case, even from a scientific point of view, that a kind of contentment and care for others comes out naturally when your stresses and your fears aren't present. So often what they recommend is to think of the benefits of selfless love to motivate us to do the practices to bring out love in us. They say that this selfless love has the side effect of increasing your own happiness. So there's a kind of selfish reason for practicing selfless loving kindness. And, especially I think if any of us are close or have seen any these really wonderful Buddhist teachers, I think of my own, the teacher I'm closest with, Venerable Rene Fusing. And I think you can see it in them, that they're happy when they're alone. They're happy when they're with others. They're happy when other people give them what they want. And they're happy when they don't. So, imagine that for yourself, being happy when you're alone, happy when you're with others, happy when you get what you want from your partner and family and friends, and happy when they don't give you what you want. That your happiness isn't contingent on all of these external things. And of course, that's an aspiration. Cultivating love comes in stages, and a first step toward loving kindness is examining our bias. So I've noticed my own bias. Let me just say for a minute, someone commented they're having trouble with the link replaying. I think it's working, right? If someone will comment and just mention whether this is playing fine, but I think it's working for most people watching right now. So one way that I've noticed this bias, this kind of almost like natural innate bias towards and against people, is when I'm walking down the street, which is actually something we don't get to do much lately with COVID. So you might have to remember those days when you used to get to walk down crowded streets and see strangers. It's almost a fond thing to think about now, right? So have you ever walked down the street and noticed, as a new stranger comes into view, that you have a strong emotional reaction to them? So I've often watched my own mind reacting to strangers in this way, and it's a lot of different feelings come up because it's confusing and wonderful and annoying all at the same time, because one person will walk by and I'll think, that guy looks so kind, I'd love to get to know him. And then I spot another person, and just something about their face or their expression or even just the way they move, and I'll think, what a jerk, literally. And then another person comes by and I feel a strong attraction to them. I want to get close to that person, feel their affection, give them mine. When I was a single person, of course, you see partners, you see people who you think you'd like to be their partner or date them or something. And then the next person, might make you feel scared, that I want to just get away as fast as possible, cross to the other side of the street. So now is a particularly good time, over everything that's happened in the last year, politically, culturally. Now it's a particularly good time to examine and challenge some of these biased states of mind. There are scientific and sociological ways to explain some of these reactions, especially when they relate to the race or the gender of people that we encounter. I think we had Dr. Jan Willis here, who talks very eloquently about those ways of manifesting our bias. And our culture and our media have told stories over generations that bias how we feel toward people who look different from ourselves, who come from different places. But I still don't find that these explanations completely explain the phenomena, because to me, this instantaneous reaction that I have to people is one of the deeper mysteries of life. And I remember feeling this strongly when I first saw my wife. And again, you may have had this feeling too with a partner or somebody you feel very close to. And I saw this woman that I didn't know at all, and I thought, that's the person I want to spend the rest of my life with, quite assuredly. And many people tell the same story. Or there were times when I started a new job or a project, and I saw someone in a big group of new people that I was going to work with, noticed the person across the room, and I thought, I really don't like that guy. And, I was right about that too. Sometimes it turned into years of conflicts with that person. So a traditional Buddhist explanation of these spontaneous reactions to people is that they're a sign of our past karma with that person. And, we'll talk about karma in a second. There are different ways of understanding it. And when I, lead meditations and do discussions like this, I try to take a completely secular point of view that doesn't require, any belief in things that can't be scientifically verified. Even though, I may personally believe in them based on Buddhist teachings. I like to try an approach that doesn't require belief in them. But for people that do believe in karma, the reason they would say that you have these responses is that you unconsciously recall your past deep relationships with strangers, from strangers in this life, from previous lives, when they were our child or our lover or our enemy. We recall all these strong emotional reactions. And so that's one explanation, and it could be true. It's difficult to prove with the tools that we have today, but it might be true. And then scientists, though, have other explanations for these kind of reactions. So there are different kind of psychologists. There's something called a cultural psychologist who says that our biases are completely embedded in the larger patterns of our culture, that we learn all of them, mostly unconsciously, from observing the behavior of people around us. And I think there's an enormous amount of truth to that, and a lot of science to back it up. And there's another type of psychologist called an evolutionary psychologist that points to our tribal evolution that biases us towards trusting people who look just like ourselves, just the people who are closest to us, who we know and recognize. And that evolved over millions of years from before we were human, and is quite innate. It takes some effort to overcome. And if you pay attention, there's kind of a funny way of looking at this, because if you pay attention, I think you might notice that the people you feel instantly attracted to often look a lot like you do. And that might explain my own attraction to my wife. People who didn't know us used to mistake us for brother and sister. We're the same height and have kind of similar ethnic backgrounds. Luckily, my wife's a lot prettier than I am. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with choosing a partner who doesn't look just like you. Who does look just like you, that is. Who comes from the same cultural, racial, socioeconomic background. And there's huge joys in the deep affection between partners, even when it's biased and partial. But it's honest and courageous, and also just interesting, to openly examine the bias in our love. Again, embracing it with mindfulness, like without judgment, without personal critique, but just with a curiosity towards your own self and acceptance towards your own self, like Tara Brach teaches so well. That we can first become aware of our bias through mindfulness by simply noticing how we react to people, who we share our affection with, who we withhold it from, who we dislike immediately, and who we ignore. So later today, if you're out in the world, or if you're watching videos of people on the internet or TV, probably won't be on a crowded sidewalk, unfortunately. But you can try to become aware of these spontaneous reactions that you have. On the computer, you can go to YouTube or Netflix. You can even turn the sound all the way off and just watch how your mind reacts to the faces and the bodies on screen, to become aware of how you are thinking and reacting to strangers. And you can watch your mind go through these surprisingly strong reactions to strangers who you know nothing about, it can be helpful not just to watch, but to label these reactions into these three main like psychological responses. The Buddhist psychology breaks down our reactions just into three main categories of um, under the category of feeling. Feelings aren't the more complex emotions from the Buddhist definition, but just three things that kind of being drawn to things, feeling like you want to get away from things, or not caring. And those manifest in attachment, aversion, or indifference. And so try and notice that and see how you feel that towards each stranger that you see, on the internet, TV, Netflix, real life. And then through mindfulness, you can also watch your mind as it interacts with the people who you are closest to, people you live with, and other close friends and family. I try to do this in my daily life sometimes. It can be a little bit painful, but I try to watch closely what my mind wants and what it doesn't want, its attachment and its aversion, as I interact through the day with my wife and my daughter and friends and colleagues and neighbors. I wish I could see all of you right now and watch that mindfully. That's a little annoying with this one-way method of communicating on Facebook Live. And a lot of the time, of course, what I see is that much of what I feel is based on me. Like what I want from my family and friends, what they do that annoys me, what I want them to stop doing. And so what I often experience is that transactional, biased form of love and not that selfless one. And then looking at those feelings of biased love, thinking about what I want and don't want, I notice my mind's agitated. That, attachment makes me feel uneasy and unsatisfied. Like I can't be happy unless those other people, that other person does what I want or stops doing something that I don't want. But a good lesson to learn, I think, for all of us is that we can't control the world. We can't control other people. But we can control our mind. And that's the motivation for cultivating this selfless form of love. That unselfish love, loving kindness, is wanting someone to be happy without anything in return. Venerable Rene, who I mentioned earlier, gave a teaching last year on this loving state of mind, and I wanted to read it. He said, within the mind of non-attachment, there can be love, which is the wish for other people to be happy. Love is a happy state of mind. The inner state of bliss pervaded by the joy and warmth of love. But you don't depend on other people. You don't depend on the object or person you love. Love is giving freely. You radiate love. And that notion of giving love freely is so beautiful, that when love is given freely to everyone you encounter, even everyone you could imagine, it becomes an even more beneficial state of mind that in English they call great love. And Lama Yeshe, who founded all of these centers that, the Tara Center and others is part of, the FPMT, Lama Yeshe used to call this big love, which has a kind of homey, welcoming, down-to-earth feeling that I think can sound less intimidating and more inviting than great love in a way. So where love is the wish for a few others to have happiness, big love is the wish for all beings without exception to have happiness and the causes of happiness. So big love transcends romantic love and even the selfless love that we sometimes have in a biased way toward those that are close to us, only toward those that are close to us. So big love is directed toward the vast expanse of all beings everywhere, expanding even beyond human beings to dogs and cats and cows and chickens and even fish and flies and ants. And when you have this kind of big love for all beings, it might make you reconsider what you're going to have for lunch too. But one basic definition of a living being is the ability to move toward things that give pleasure and away from those that give pain. And so with great love or big love, we wish even animals and insects to have whatever simple happiness they can, and for me to be a cause of their happiness. That's why you often see someone, who has this kind of altruistic loving kindness, picking up ants off of the pathway and, otherwise caring for little creatures. The Dalai Lama gave a recent talk online where he explained how when he wakes up in the morning, the very first thing he does is to confirm his commitment to this ideal of universal love. And he uses a beautiful prayer by the 7th century Buddhist saint Shantideva that some of you may know. Very short prayer that I think a number of people may know already. But it goes like this. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, so shall I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. It's nice of the Dalai Lama to talk about his own practice like that. I think it's really inspiring. And this particular example that each morning the Dalai Lama renews his commitment to benefit all beings for infinite time. So whether you believe it's possible or not to live forever, lifetime after lifetime, which is a big thing to take on if that wasn't part of your culture growing up, still, it can be worth just thinking about it, imagining being able to make that commitment if it were possible. Just like you might read a novel or go watch a science fiction film or fantasy film, even though dragons aren't real and so on. But there can be quite inspiring in different ways to you, even as a fictional idea. So even if you don't have a conviction in past and future lives, just thinking about that idea of somebody being able to make that commitment, imagine committing not just this life, but millions and billions of lives dedicated only to helping others be happy, that I myself will be a cause for their happiness. Think of it as more like a science fiction show. And so that's what they say in terms of meditation, that even if you don't believe in past and future lives, thinking about that idea, that kind of daily reflection on such a boundless, timeless love, ends up being a deep, reliable cause of your own happiness. So I really think it works even if you don't believe in rebirth. Just refreshing this kind of healthy fantasy, if you think of it about it that way for yourself. You don't have conviction in those ideas. It can have a transformative effect on the mind. And you see it in the Dalai Lama himself, although of course it's not a fantasy for him. That is his reality. He's so happy and so loving. So many world leaders are angry and stressed out and grumpy and impatient, but not His Holiness. And I think it's because he grounds his every thought and action in this universal concern for others. Big love, great love, universal love. There's an even simpler kind of prayer or phrase that people use. May all beings have happiness and its causes. Very simple way to expand your heart. It's the first line of a common Buddhist prayer. It's what you are thinking if you say the mantra Om Mani Padme Hum, which a lot of people are familiar with. May all beings have happiness and its causes. You say this at the end of a yoga class with the Hindu mantra Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. And you see, just saying that, or hearing me say it, you see how it can just make you smile. And then the last thing I wanted to mention on this, we're going to do a meditation in a few minutes. But before we do that, the last thing I want to mention is that meditating on love shouldn't be hard. Certain meditations, like meditating on suffering or death or renunciation, or even focused concentration on the breath, don't seem attractive on the surface. And though the results of those meditations are extraordinary and worthwhile, they can take some effort. But meditating on love tends to feel good. right away. It's pleasurable and it's enjoyable, it's easy to do, and it's even logical. When I started teaching meditation about 14 years ago, there was a nun I worked very closely with, a Buddhist nun I worked very closely with, who used to scold me because I guided too many meditations on love. She said it was too easy and I needed to do all the other topics too. But anyway, luckily that is the topic for today. So we're going to do a meditation. I think it's about 10 minutes or so, a short meditation. And so if you can, get yourself into some kind of meditation posture. Let's see. You can either be cross-legged on the floor or on a cushion. Elevate your seat if you can somehow. Or if you're in a chair, you can not cross your legs, just leave your legs out and straight down. Okay. And so now, straighten your spine. That's the most important part of the posture. You can tilt your head slightly down and half close your eyes. Touch your tongue to the roof of your mouth. Slightly open your mouth. And relax. Relax all the muscles in your shoulders, your neck, your face, your back, your body. Become grounded in the sensation of your body and its connection to the seat, the chair, the cushion, the earth. And now bring your focus to your breath as it comes in and out of your nostrils, or at your abdomen as it rises and falls. And for 1 minute, just focus on your breath, without distraction if you can. Make the intention that I'll focus on my breath for 1 minute. And if other thoughts and feelings, or even pains or sensations in the body arise, just let them pass by. Don't pull them forward, and don't even push them away. Just let them gently pass by for 1 minute silently together. So before you can love others, you must love yourself. And so picture yourself in your mind sitting in front of you just as you are. You know yourself. Don't deny any of yourself. But imagine yourself in front of you as if you were a different person. How would you treat a dear friend who had your same mix of beautiful qualities, some few small temporary faults, bad habits? Try to accept everything about yourself the same way that you would for someone else that you dearly love. Understanding the words and actions and thoughts that you regret come from misunderstandings, conditioning, mistakes. That your motivation in life is good. And wish yourself all of the good and the happiness that there is. You deserve it. Your very nature itself is good and kind and loving, compassionate, patient, and wise. And the disturbing thoughts and emotions that you have are shallower, transitory, not part of the innate goodness that's at the heart of your very being. And so imagine that all these good feelings become a warm energy at your heart, an energy that you can feel that also has a visible glow. And that this energy expands from your heart on a beam of light to fill the body and mind of the you that's sitting before you. On that light, offer yourself all the happiness and goodness that there is, that's there latent, already inside you. Now let that self in front of you dissolve into light. And from the field of light energy that surrounds you, materialize first your mother on your left, whether she's alive or not, your father on your right, behind you relatives and friends, close colleagues, and in front of you materialize the people that you dislike, specific people that have hurt you, or greater enemies of your friends and family, or people that you care about, or enemies as you perceive them of the whole world itself. And then surrounding all these people that we know or know of are all other beings extending around as far as you can see, in a great circle, all of humanity. They all want to be happy. None of them want to suffer. They're all trying to make the best of their lives, even the misguided, angry ones. Of all these people that you love beside and behind you, pick out someone you love dearly, one person, a friend, a family, child, someone ideally whose love is less complex for you, simpler and purer. And then move that person in front of you for a moment and focus solely on them, maintaining some awareness of all the other beings, but mostly focus on that one person that you love. And look at life from their perspective. See what's going on for them through their mind, how it feels to be them, all the things you love about them. If things come up about them that annoy you, flip it around and wish for them to be free of the problems and the annoyances and the pains that they suffer. As that love for that person wells up in you, imagine it as a warm, bright energy at your heart. You can feel it. You can even see it with your mind's eye. And let that light as love flow out to that one person in front of you. You want everything good for that person. And so offer them the material conditions for happiness of food and shelter and security and wealth. And offer them the inner conditions of happiness, of mental stability and joy, being alone or with others, being happy, either way. Offer them the wisdom that understands the true causes of happiness and cultivates these in everyday life. And think what specifically this person needs, what they tell you they need, the material conditions they need. But also at the deepest level, what they need to be happy inside, to feel whole and happy and content. And so with the light from your heart, offer this dear one to you, everything that they need. And now this love, this warm energy at your heart flows out on other beings, to your friends and family and the people you're close to, beside and behind you. Imagine them living, breathing, alive. Think of each one specifically as the energy of your love travels to them. It's not a vague cloud of friends and family around you, but let each one crystallize specifically in detail. Their faces moving, reacting, their bodies shifting, what they're wearing. Offer each of them the causes of happiness, health, and security, financial well-being, freedom from problems, freedom from sadness, a peaceful life, a long life, a clean, healthy environment. For each of you close to me, may you have everything you need. Also wish them the inner causes of happiness, inner joy, contentedness, the wisdom understanding cause and effect, and our interdependence with everyone and everything. Wish that they reach that state beyond delusion and fear, the state of enlightenment, of continuous joy and love and connection. Think of those you have difficulty with in front of you, how they also need and deserve your love. Even selfishly, if they were happy, they would probably stop bothering you and others. And in the same way, let energy flow from your heart to theirs. As it flows out of you, it's replenished. See how your love is endless. It doesn't run out. Wish them to be free of confusion, free of anger, free of any selfishness that drives them. Sincerely wish them to have happiness, to have peace, to even reach that state of enlightenment. And then from enemies, finally bring your attention to strangers, billions of them surrounding us in a great circle on all sides. Send them love also, wish them to be happy, to have everything they need. As you do this, try and see them as individuals, as men, women, children, black, brown, white, people in between with non-binary identities, people who are sick and poor, people who are wealthy and powerful, people on every continent, and on ships, in the ocean, in airplanes flying above, even a few people in space, orbiting our planet. Expand your love to all beings on Earth. Even other creatures, to all the dogs and cats and fish and chickens and cows on Earth. Remember how cute and lovable they are when you see them in a petting zoo or a farm. Billions of lovable creatures on Earth like this. Wish them happiness too. Each of them treasures their life. Each wants to feel good and to escape pain. Now try to imagine a world where you could offer every creature on Earth the specific things and conditions they need to live out a healthy, happy, peaceful life. And that's a nice place to end, with this warm feeling of love toward all life on Earth. Earth's such a precious place with such a vast diversity of life, and I can be a force for making each being I encounter just a little bit happier and safer. So may that be my life's purpose. This is true love, wishing all beings to be happy. And the side effect of this great love, loving kindness, is that it makes me happy. It gives my own life meaning, with the simple purpose of benefiting others. And so we come out of the meditation and we have time for some questions. actually already had a pretty big list of questions. Um, I can start answering. Again, as a friend, as a friend who's all interested in this path of Buddhist mind training, I think we can discuss some questions together. Don't want to pretend like I'm some great expert, but it's nice to at least discuss the ideas and the techniques that we've learned from great Buddhist masters. I'll go through some of them. Really, there's really quite a few. And ask more in the comments. If you have any comments in the comment field, you can put in a question, but I'll answer a few. We could go longer too if people want. And tell me if the answers are useful. Someone asks, what's the difference between healthy and unhealthy love? And that's tricky because I think, you never want to judge yourself. I think the first step in, a healthy mind is accepting everything that you are. So probably for that question, it's more, for you to decide for yourself, to become aware. I know, like for myself, just to become aware and mindful of how I feel when I'm doing or feeling certain things, like when I'm wanting something from my partner, affection, or her to act in a certain way. That wanting, I find, doesn't actually feel that good. So I don't know if healthy and unhealthy is the best words, but you can certainly look in your own mind and just notice when your mind is agitated with certain ways of feeling. And then that other state, when I feel best with my own partner, is when I'm really thinking about her and what I can do for her, how I can make her happy, how wonderful she is in her life and the integrity and dignity that she lives it with. So, and I notice my mind is quite clear and open. I think observing your mind for that openness or the tightness, can help you to figure out which states of mind might be healthier or more beneficial for you without necessarily trying to ever push any away. Even accepting the ones that maybe do make you feel tight. Or if you like, gradually cultivating the ones that make you feel better, make you feel more open, at your own pace. So the question is, what should you work on yourself before you choose a life partner? I think that's a really great question. 'Cause I certainly know a lot of people who've always been in relationships. They go from relationship to relationship. So I think, even before becoming a Buddhist, that idea that you want to become comfortable with yourself, that seems very, very important. I think that you know how to be happy by yourself, that you're content by yourself. You know yourself. You get to know yourself and who you are without another person around, because it gets harder as you're with somebody all the time. So I think just that simple thing of knowing yourself and spending time by yourself, potentially long stretches of time. I know I lived by myself for big stretches of like maybe 7, 8, 9 years of my life, and those were very beneficial growing times. Or maybe that's a simple answer to that one. I bet a lot of people would agree. Feel free to put in comments too if people find these helpful or not, or if you have your own answers to some of these. Okay, someone asks what qualities should a life partner have? When I read that, I think a little bit about my own, way of thinking more about what I want from a partner. Obviously, you don't want to get involved with someone who's abusive and selfish and so on. But they say if you want to be loved, make yourself lovable. Like something I actually asked my teacher, about relationships once, my Buddhist teacher once, after I'd gotten out of a long relationship. And what he said was to look for a common purpose in life, to find a person with whom you share certain ideals and purpose in life and a direction in life, a sense of, what you want out of life. I think that's very good advice. I think that's very helpful advice for the long run. And by the way, we're 1 hour in, so if anyone wants to leave, that's okay. I do have a lot of questions. They're pretty interesting to talk about. I wish we could be more interactive in our conversation. Let me know if some people want to stick around and do some more questions, or if we should, let everybody move away from a screen for a little bit of time on a Sunday. But I'll look for a couple messages. Oh, here's a question. So let's see. How does one help a loved one overcome the hurt that you've caused them so that your mutual love can grow in a healthy way? Well, I've certainly been there myself. Apologizing is always a good one, sincerely apologizing. I think we all know that sees to this, to be humble and to acknowledge your role. That's kind of spoken mindfulness, right? To be aware of your role in causing a problem and just to be honest about it. Asking them how you can help. A lot of this just comes from, basic relationship advice, but I think getting out of yourself, asking how you can help. How can I help? What can I do to make this better? Put it in their hands rather than to keep thinking from yourself, how am I gonna do this? But just opening up. I think questions are one of the deepest ways you can, open-ended questions, and if you really read relationship books and the science in relationships, asking open-ended questions is one of the most best ways to connect with people. And then I think also this practice that we did, I've seen other teachers do this a lot, that this practice where you imagine taking away the person's pain. In Tibetan Buddhism, they call it Tonglen practice, but it can serve almost an alchemical, powerful, transformational purpose in a relationship, because it immediately flips things around and you just imagine taking away the pain that you caused them. Just imagine. You imagine taking it all out. Imagine taking it all on yourself and then giving them all happiness, all goodness, wishing them to be happy. Again, there's not like some guarantee this is like a magic process that actually takes away their problems, but it transforms your mind and opens and loosens your mind in a way that I think you then become able to be like flexible and more sensitive to your partner's needs and able to do the right thing or leave them alone. Sometimes just giving a person a lot of space is what they need. I think this is relatively straightforward relationship advice, but those are things that I've tried and that I've heard. Maybe a couple more questions, then we can go. These are all very good questions. I have all these same questions. Why are love relationships so hard? I think that's a really good one. And I think it's because there's so much attachment involved. I know for myself, speaking from my own perspective, relationships are difficult. First of all, it's just logistically difficult to integrate your life with another person. They say even in the best relationships, these Gottmans, these Gottmans are a couple that are one of the best. I've done some of the best scientific research on relationships, and they say even in couples that get along the best, they disagree about half the time. So I think acknowledging that disagreement and conflict is normal in any relationship, even in a Buddhist monastery, you see. So it's not being free from conflict, right? Relationships are hard because there's just naturally always conflict with other people. But I think what makes it really hard is, again, this like misguided view that it's what they can do for me, making that list of the qualities you wanted to mate and then the things they can do for you. It's not like you're just going to pick someone random off the street, of course, to be your partner. You do have to choose very carefully. But the attitude, I think one of genuinely finding a partner that you do have a common purpose in life, and then trying to serve that person, as much as possible. And I say this very, humbly, and as someone who doesn't do it all the time. But I do think when I am selfless and kind, altruistic, the relationship goes really well, honestly. And then surprisingly, a lot of things you're like striving for and arguing about and wanting for, a lot of them just in some ways effortlessly fall out of altruism, kindness. um, there's some better relationship counselors out there you can talk to about this, and Buddhist teachers. The thing about a lot of Buddhist teachers, though, is they've never been in a romantic relationship, so it's nice to talk about these things. It's such a long list of questions here. Maybe I'll just choose one more. Somebody wants to type too. That's fine. There's so many, it's actually hard. Okay. This is a good one. Thought about criticism in relationship. That's something I struggle with. So I think something Venerable Sangye Kadro, who I think Kathleen McDonald, I think she might have spoken here, but I asked her about this actually once, and she said to me that other people are a mirror. From a psychological perspective, they call that projection. That you look at the people around you and you see, your own qualities in them, like often your own qualities you struggle with. So, say someone's messy, it might not be because you're a little bit messy and you don't like that about yourself. But I think that's very, very powerful to realize that. I certainly realize that about myself, that the criticism that I feel and express, if I'm honest, I do those things too, and I'm embarrassed or I'm trying to work on those things. So I think Venerable Kathleen McDonald's guidance that other people are a mirror, I think is very, very powerful with criticism. Instead of criticizing, expressing needs, they say, like, I think as a Buddhist it's tricky because sometimes we think we're not supposed to have any needs, but I think from a healthy psychological perspective, it's much nicer to express needs than criticism. Like, if you're not honest with your needs and requests, then I think it comes out as criticism and attacks. So I think just asking for what you want. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but there's a much better chance you'll get it if you actually ask. So instead of criticism, even something like the dishes, like, oh, you never clean the dishes. Just ask, like, hey, would you please do the dishes? Or saying how much you like it when they do the dishes, oh, I love it when you do the dishes. Notice when they do and give positive reinforcement. When you train animals, you don't give any negative reinforcement. Like dolphins, all you do is give them a little fish when they do the right thing. So I'm not saying you have to train your partner, but as a more positive way of, like, instead of as an alternative to criticism, noticing what's good and giving positive feedback, expressing your needs. And then also in taking criticism, that I think that's one of the biggest issues, because when I'm bad at that, I feel like there's a strong me that's attacked and that I have to defend. And then sometimes my wife will make a tiny criticism and I'll make a crazy, huge offense and attack back. So, there's different Buddhist approaches. One Buddhist approach is just to accept it and to say, and to really look what's true about their criticism and say, thank you. I appreciate that feedback. And I'll think about that. I'll try to work on that. Like, that's kind of very sweet if it's possible to do that. And if it's wrong, what's the big deal, right? If it's wrong, you can just listen and let it go by. Like if you really analyze and it's not a valid criticism, then it's not true. So you don't have to defend yourself. And from a deeper perspective, there's nobody to defend. You can start searching from if you're into that, trying to understand emptiness and what the self really is. When you're criticized, it's an extraordinary opportunity, because they say you have to be criticized in order to get that inherent self, that self that doesn't really exist, but you have to have it arise. So, when you look at the great saints like Shantideva, that's they say is you need that criticism. So you can be actually very grateful. Every once in a while I've felt that, not often, but sometimes. So you appreciate the criticism that somebody gives you and say, ooh, that's so helpful. Now it brings up that strong ego, that inherent I. Now let me look at that I and try to find it. And so we're losing the topic here a little bit, because we're talking mostly about love, but it's a very, very powerful way to use being criticized. And I think a lot of the people listening are probably familiar with this technique of trying to search for yourself. So if someone really strongly criticizes you, try to search for the person, for the you that's being criticized. Are they criticizing my body, my thoughts, my feelings? And as you do, you'll see it may be hard or impossible to find that person that's being criticized, and that can make you kind of laugh it all off. It's a very nice feeling when that's possible. You laugh it off and you say, well, there's not even any Scott here to be criticized. I'm just a jumble of parts and thoughts and feelings changing constantly. So thank you for criticizing me to point out that false sense of self that's not really there. A little bit advanced technique, but for those of you familiar with it, it's a nice reminder. I think I'll leave this big list of questions aside, and I think now's a good time to end. People do need their time away from the screen, and these practices would be nice to practice in everyday life. So I really appreciate the invitation. Again, I'm not a Dharma teacher, but it's nice as a fellow student just to talk and think about these things together. I hope it was helpful. Send any feedback you like my way, positive or negative, ways I can improve. I run a podcast called The Skeptic's Path to Enlightenment, where we have discussions, meditations, and also interviews. We have a beautiful interview with Robert Thurman up right now, if you'd like to hear it. And continue coming to these Tara broadcasts. They're fantastic and beautiful array of speakers, and Paloma's doing such a wonderful job. I wish I could meet you all in person, hopefully one day. Have a beautiful day. Thank you.